Hello and welcome to this video, and on this video I will be looking at the 10 greatest prog albums, but they're actually jazz fusion albums. I recently did a video where I discussed the 10 greatest prog albums in my opinion. I did try and make it as objective as I could, and when I was putting that list together, fusion albums kept popping into my brain, and I thought, well, I really want to keep this classic prog artists. You know, I don't want to kick out ELP, or I don't want to kick out, you know, Van de Graaff Generator to stick a Chick Corea album. So I shelved all these albums. But if I was really being objective, some of these albums would have made the list. So on this video, I'm going to be looking at what I believe are prog albums and what I believe are some of the greatest prog albums, but they're really contained within the jazz fusion genre. It's the evil. We all need it because we need to be able to find the music that we like. But these classifications in the end tie us all in knots. It's all nonsense. Just like ranking videos, it's all nonsense. We're here just to talk about music, you know, and enjoy our love of the music we like. So with that, let's begin. And I'm going to rank these videos from 10 to 1. So at number 10, I have Caravenserai by Santana. Santana first emerged in 1969. They appeared at Woodstock, and they're in the Woodstock film. And their performance of Soul Sacrifice is one of the great moments in Woodstock. This propelled them to fame. They then brought a second album out after their self-titled first album called Abraxas. That contained the hit Black Magic Woman, and Santana became one of the big rock bands at that time. Very popular, very successful. You know, they had a mainstream record deal with Columbia CBS, and in 1971, 1972, they bring out this, their third album. This album has assimilated all the influences from John Coltrane, all the influences from electronic music, from Miles Davis, from Bitches Brew, and Santana bring all this together in a sort of suite-like structure, which is what you get on this album. Side 1 opens up with Eternal Caravan of Reincarnation, which could almost be Tangerine Dream. A lot of electronics, a lot of drones, spaciness, it feels mystical and esoteric. And as the side 1 develops, it slowly moves from one track to the next, almost imperceptibly. You feel like you're listening to one piece of music which just sort of grows out and gets bigger, and you get like jazz improvisation, we get Latin American passages, we get electronic experimentation. And I thought, for the time this was made, I think it was made in 71, came out in 72, this album is really out there, it's really progressive. It deserves to be on this list at number 10. I wouldn't say it's an out-and-out prog album. It doesn't contain all the hallmarks that we associate with prog. There's no sort of classical structures, you know, an extended through composition. But everything else, you know, the sort of mystical illusions, the use of electronics, the use of experimentation, the use of like a suite-like structure, definitely make this a prog album. So that's what I have at number 10. It was mentioned many times in the list. You know, I think Caravenserai is one of the great prog albums, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to put it on the list. All the rest of these I would now describe as out-and-out prog albums. At number 9, I have Venusian Summer by Lenny White. I differentiate between jazz rock and fusion. Right, fusion is the title given to a style of music that had emerged by the end of the 70s and was really mixing jazz with popular music forms, funk and all that type of stuff. Jazz rock is something else. That emerges in the early 70s. And jazz rock is basically jazz channeled through progressive rock techniques and approaches. The Mahavishnu Orchestra, Return to Forever, all those bands, 11th House, are all using progressive rock and pioneering progressive rock approaches. No more than Return to Forever and all the musicians in Return to Forever. You know, Chick Corea, Al Di Meola, Stanley Clarke, they all could have made this list. But I went for this because I think this is one of the greatest fusion albums and one of the greatest prog albums ever made. At number 9, Venusian Summer. It actually opens up with 2 pretty funky tracks, but once we get past those, we come to the Venusian Summer Suite, which opens up very much like the Santana album with this sort of orchestral electronic beginning. It's actually called Sirens, and it's created by Lenny White and Patrick Gleason using analog synths and electronics. It's really their attempt to create an orchestra using electronics, and it's very successful. It sounds very orchestral, and that moves into the Venusian Summer, which is part 2 of this suite, which is sort of a jazz flute extravaganza with Hubert Laws. It's all pretty proggy. Flip it over onto side 2 and you get the incredible Mated Drive, which is a brutal jazz fusion track with Ray Gomez on guitar, some incredible guitar playing from Ray, some incredible drumming from Lenny White. It's got Doug Roush on bass, we've got Larry Young on keyboards. It's one of the greatest lineups ever on any fusion album, and it's just so out there and in your face. That's 7 minutes long, and that sort of slowly morphs through an incredible bit of drumming into the Prince of the Sea suite, which is 11 minutes long and is just out and out prog. It features both Larry Coryell and Al Di Meola, and all the way through this album we get these sort of fantasy, science fiction-y, almost Star Trek imagery all the way through this, which makes it really, really interesting, and for me makes it really proggy. So that's what I have at number 9, Venusian Summer. At number 8, I've got Total Eclipse by Billy Cobham. Right, Billy Cobham first emerged with Miles Davis, Horace Silver, The Dreams, and then he gets the gig with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and really defines jazz fusion drumming. His drumming with that band is really influencing the prog drummers. You can hear Bruford and you can hear Phil Collins. They've got their ear on Billy Cobham. He's leading the way. In 1973, he brings out a solo album called Spectrum, which really takes what the Mahavishnu Orchestra is doing and marries that with sort of rhythm and blues approach. It's a really, really funky album. But the prog's in there. The second album, Crosswinds, has got a sidelong epic on there. She's very proggy, but I feel here he hits his prog stride. After this, he gets very funky. But this is Cobham's prog album. It features 2 suites, 2 extended compositions. One on side 1 and one on side 2. On side 1, we have a suite called Solarization, which is in 5 parts. It's a real sort of classical structure of having a theme and then developing that theme. The theme is developed through almost like modern classical improvisation and some out and out jazz fusion improvisation, and then we go back to the theme again. It's quite incredible. And then side 2, we have After the Very Short The Moon Ain't Green Cheese, which is a sort of very pretty piano interlude. We go into the Sea of Tranquility suite. Of course, one of my favourite YouTubes out there is Sea of Tranquility, so shout out to Pete Pardo and all the guys at Sea of Tranquility. I always wondered whether they named it after the song on here. I don't think they did, but I wish they did. Anyway, this is out and out prog, right? It's all over the place. Incredible drumming from Billy Cobham. So that's what I've got at number 8, Total Eclipse. At number 7, I have an album which is more prog than most prog albums. It is The Leprechaun by Chick Corea. This is a concept album about fairy folk. Right? Even John Anderson couldn't have made an album this twee. Okay? But it works because Chick Corea really understands classical structures and classical forms, and he really knows how to compose for a rock band and an expanded rock band. This album has got like string quartet passages on here. We have mass choirs, we have sort of overdubbed keyboard epics, and we have some really hot burning soloing going on. The musicianship's incredible. Steve Gadd's drum performance on here is one of the greatest drum performances of all time. Side 2 has 3 tracks, Soft and Gentle, Pixieland Rag and Leprechaun's Dream, but they all blend together in one sidelong epic, which just covers absolutely everything. This is an album, concept album, about fairy folk, about pixies and fairies, about sprites, you know. And Chick Corea makes the music sound like that. It is really twee, but it's twee in a really incredible way, and it's balanced by the fact that at some points there's some of the most ferocious playing you've ever heard in your life. So that's what I've got at number 7, The Leprechaun by Chick Corea. Right. What have I got at number 6? One of the hallmarks of prog are epics. Now, to create an epic, you have to know how to extend the form. All right. Some prog bands are not so good at this. They basically write 4 songs and then they join them all together. Okay. And there's many a prog band that have created an epic that way. It's actually very difficult to make a through composed piece that all hangs together, where you're not repeating yourself and you're not just bringing in stuff that's so new that it doesn't relate. It requires a real understanding and knowledge of composition. Right? The greatest version of this, the most epic, the most incredible prog extended track of all time is The Way Up by Pat Metheny, right? Which, as you can see, is 68 minutes long, right? There's not that much improvisation on there. There's some, but the improvisation is contained within the composition. It forms a part of the composition. There's not much extended blowing. This really is an hour, or nearly an hour and 10 minute through composed piece. If you're a progressive rock fan and you marvel at Close to the Edge or 2112 and you think that's incredible, go and check this out. This is an absolute virtuoso progressive rock instrumental track. It's mind-blowing. So that's what I've got at number 6, The Way Up. Right. Another hallmark of progressive rock is epicness, bigness, you know. And it doesn't get any bigger than this. Well, it does. It's going to be the next album after this, but this is pretty epic as well. The Mahavishnu Orchestra Apocalypse. John McLaughlin composed a collection of extended tunes for full orchestra, jazz fusion band, which has also been extended with a string quartet and a brass section. And he wanted to record this all live in the studio. He brought in George Martin to produce it. He brought Mike Gibbs to arrange it. And he brought in the great Mike Tilson Thomas to conduct the London Symphony Orchestra. This is about as epic as it gets. It's got vocals on it, and those vocals are very spiritually influenced, very esoteric, but they're also very operatic. And we have 2 long-form compositions on here, Vision is a Naked Sword and Wings of Karma. And they really are tightly composed. There is blowing on here, the soloing does go off, but I think it's one of the most successful marriages between an orchestra and a rock band or jazz group. It's quite incredible. Smile of the Beyond is just sublime, you know, with Gail Moran's incredible vocal. George Martin in his autobiography said it was one of the high points of his career. And I think what he did in his career, so that's saying something. The famous story that goes with that track is that I think Gail Moran was chewing gum, and George Martin sort of tricked us. He went, let's just run it through and see how we go. And he hit record, and she ran it through very relaxed. She felt she hadn't done her best vocal performance, and at the end of that, George Martin said, no, we've nailed it, it's there. And she was quite upset. Oh, I want to do it, I want to get it right. But George Martin's brilliant production had enabled to get a really relaxed performance, which is really difficult when you're sat in a huge recording studio with the London Symphony Orchestra playing in front of you, conducted by Michael Tilson Thomas, with everything mic'd up, everything being recorded, and if you make one slip up, they've all got to start again. And it's a testament to Gail, it's a testament to John McLaughlin's composition, it's a testament to George Martin's incredible production. This is an absolutely brilliant album, and if you're a progger, this is a good place to start with the Mahavishnu Orchestra. It's a pretty epic album, but it's not as epic as this one, which I got at number 4. Escalate Over the Hill. Right, this is a triple album 6 sides, which was created by Carla Bley, who's a composer and jazz pianist, and the lyricist Paul Haynes, sorry. It's an opera. It's an opera that uses avant-garde jazz, free jazz, electronics, experimentation, rock, fusion and prog, and it puts all that together. There's a number of bands on here. There's a sort of almost like a free jazz orchestra. There's like a rock band which features John McLaughlin, Paul Motion, who's not a rock drummer but incredible addition. Jack Bruce is in there. It comes with the libretto. It's basically an opera. It's about as big as it gets. Some incredible playing on here. Don Cherry's on here. Just looking at the Leroy Jenkins, Carl Berger, Roswell Wood. I'm just pulling out names. There's so many people. I think this album took about 5 years to make. It's an absolute epic. It's probably the most epic album ever made that I can think of. It's just so huge. Right, if you are a prog fan, approach this with caution. This is prog, but it's not foxtrot and it's not brain salad surgery. This is something else. It opens up with a sidelong tune called Hotel Overture, which is really like a free jazz epic. It's controlled and composed, but there's a lot of avant-garde approaches on this album. So yeah, approach with caution, but if you really want to hear something that is truly progressive, this is about the most progressive album I can think of. Right, so what do we have at number 3? Okay, number 3 I have Dave Sanchez and Transformation Speed of Love. Right, do you know how many times I've got it in the neck on this channel for not including Dave Sanchez? And they're all right, they're correct. I get it wrong. You know, when I did my 10 greatest keyboardists, I should have put Sanchez on the list. And why didn't I? Because he's a keyboardist, but he's also a guitarist. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He's an artist. He's a sideman. I don't straight away associate him as a keyboardist, but of course he's an incredible fusion keyboardist. He does some incredible solos on that Venusian Sum album that was holding up earlier on. He first came to prominence in Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. Right, I find that very, very strange. And he plays on the first 3 albums. But he wanted to form his own band. And he forms a band called Dave Sanchez and Tone. What's interesting is the reason he got a deal and he made this album was because Bruce Springsteen went to the record label and sold the project to them. So we have to thank Bruce Springsteen for this incredible album. Sanchez made 3 classic albums in the 70s. They're all really incredible. I'm not going to argue that Transformation is his greatest album because they're all really hard to split apart, but I think it's his most proggiest. It's got an epic on side 1, and it's not just a jazz fusion epic, it's a tightly composed and controlled through composition. It's quite incredible. He's pulling on absolutely everything: funk, rock, classical, prog. It's all in there on this album. In the 80s, Sanchez stopped making so many solo albums and he worked more as a sideman. He's probably most well known to the general public as the keyboardist on 10 Summoners Songs by Sting. He played keyboards on 7 Days, so you know everyone's heard Dave Sanchez because everyone's heard that track. I think the fact that he wasn't producing the sort of solo albums that he did in the 1980s meant he sort of fell off the radar in terms of jazz fusion, but he's a really, really important musician in the history of that. Right, what have we got at number 2? Right, when I made my 10 greatest prog albums, I felt I left Tubular Bells off. Okay, I did consider it, I didn't forget it, but when I was going through the albums, I thought, am I really going to kick off Brain Salad Surgery? Am I really going to kick off Gong's You? And Gong, I really feel that, to me, the top 3 prog album. It's not so well known. Tubular Bells is well known. There's an argument it could have gone in there anyway. Jazz fusion has its own Tubular Bells, and it is this album, The First 7 Days by Jan Hammer. Here Jan Hammer makes a concept album based upon the first 7 days of the Bible. He's playing absolutely everything on here, a lot of overdub keyboards and percussion. He also plays drums on here. He's got 2 guests on here. He's got Stephen Kindler from the Mavish Orchestra on violin and Dave Earl Johnson on percussion. This is one of the great prog albums. This is one of the albums that I really wanted to put on the list. If you're a prog fan, this is you have to own this, especially if you're a fan of sort of Tangerine Dream or Jean-Michel Jarre or Tubular Bells, or you're interested in electronic, you know, analog synths, Moog synths, all that type of thing. But it's way beyond that. Jan Hammer is an absolute genius who's really able to create compositions. Of course, in the 1980s, he went on with his compositions to sell 3 million albums with the original soundtrack of Miami Vice. This guy's done some stuff. But way back here in 1975, I think it is, he made this epic. And if you're a prog fan, this is a must-have album. As is what I have at number 1. You know what it's going to be. One of the greatest prog albums of all time. Perhaps the greatest instrumental prog album of all time. And it is, of course, Romantic Warrior by Return to Forever. Right? If you have a friend who's a prog fan, right, and they don't listen to Fusion, and they tell you how great the musicianship is in Rush or ELP or Genesis or Yes, you know, and they're trying to tell you, and these are great players, right? Play them this, because the virtuosity level on this is mind-blowing. And it's channeled through one of the most proggiest albums ever made, where Chick Corea goes deep into this sort of medieval fantasy world, and he just paints a picture of that through these incredible compositions. Not just his compositions, but we get composition for every guy in the band, and they're all ridiculously proggy. It ends with the incredible Duel of the Jester and the Tyrant Part 1 and Part 2, which is probably one of the most proggy moments in music history. It's definitely with the most proggy title in music history. So that's what I've got at number 1, Romantic Warrior by Return to Forever. So that is my top 10 prog albums that are really jazz fusion albums. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please press the like button. If you want to see more, press subscribe. Please put your comments down below, because I see what I'm doing here as a resource for people who are coming to like prog or fusion or classic rock or jazz. There's so much information in the comments as well, so please have a look at the comments, have a read through this. There'll be some incredible suggestions, incredible opinion. If you really want to support what I'm doing here, then you can become a patron. I haven't sold it to the end of the video, but I'm selling it now. The link's down there. And the more you support me, the more I can do. You know, this channel is growing and it's getting bigger. It's been a big lurch, you know, that progressive rock albums video I did. I think today it's sort of around about, is it 35,000, 34,000 views, and that's brought a lot of new viewers. So if you are a new viewer to the channel, hello new viewer, go and check out all the other videos. There's all these new people coming on say you should do a video on this. I already have done. There's 200 videos there, so go and have a Google and a search and have a watch. I'm going to finish up now. That's it. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.